Welcome back to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we are heading to the Eternal City, Rome, to discuss a discovery that has recently shaken the archaeological world. It is a story that forces us to rewrite our mental map of the Middle Ages, involving a lost palace, a warrior pope, the coronation of Charlemagne, and a construction crew that was just trying to pave a square for the upcoming Jubilee. If you have ever visited Rome, you know that it is a city built like a lasagna. Every time you dig a hole for a subway line or a basement, you hit history. But rarely does a bulldozer scrape back the asphalt to reveal something that changes our understanding of how the papacy survived the Dark Ages. In preparation for the Jubilee of 2025, a massive event expected to draw 30 million pilgrims, the city of Rome began renovating the Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano. This is a busy transit hub, a place usually filled with traffic, rallies, and concerts. The goal was simple: new paving and better pedestrian flow in front of the Archbasilica of St. John Lateran. But as the modern surface was peeled away, the workers hit resistance. They didn't find the rubble of the 19th century. They found massive, purposeful blocks of tuffo, or volcanic tuff. These were the bones of a lost empire. They had stumbled upon the defensive walls of the Patriarchium. To understand why this is huge, we have to strip away the modern image of the Vatican. Today, when we think of the Pope, we think of St. Peter's Basilica, the dome of Michelangelo, and the Swiss Guard across the river. But for the first 1,000 years of Christianity, the Vatican was essentially a graveyard on the outskirts of town. The real center of power, the beating heart of the Church, was the Lateran. This was the residence of the popes for a millennium. It was not just a house. It was a city within a city, a sprawling complex that rivaled the imperial palaces of Constantinople. And until these recent excavations, much of its physical reality was lost to time, fire, and demolition. Let's go back to the beginning. The story starts with Emperor Constantine. After he legalized Christianity, he didn't hand over the Roman Forum to the Pope. That was still the pagan heart of the city. Instead, he donated the lands of the Laterani family on the edge of Rome. There, he built the first great basilica, St. John Lateran, which still holds the title of the mother and head of all churches in Rome and the world. Next to it, the popes moved into the existing villas. Over centuries, this grew into the Patriarchium. It was the administrative brain of the church. It was where the archives were kept, where the treasury was guarded, and where the often chaotic elections of new popes took place. The walls discovered in the recent excavation date back to the 9th century, and they tell us that this palace was also a bunker. The 9th century was a terrifying time to be a Roman. The Mediterranean, once a Roman lake, had become a danger zone. Saracen pirates were raiding the coasts with impunity. In the year 846, they actually sailed up the Tiber River and sacked the basilicas of St. Peter and St. Paul, stripping them of their gold and silver. The Pope realized he could no longer rely on the distant Byzantine emperors in Constantinople for protection. He was on his own. The excavation revealed thick ramparts capable of withstanding battering rams. In true Roman fashion, the builders were desperate. They cannibalized earlier imperial structures, throwing ancient marble statues and columns into the foundations to build the walls higher and faster. These walls turned the Patriarchium into a fortress where the Pope could survive a siege, not just from foreign invaders, but often from the Roman mob and rival noble families. However, the Patriarchium wasn't just about defense. It was about projection of power. The recent finds are linked to the most glorious phase of the palace, the Carolingian era, specifically the reign of Pope Leo III. You might know Leo III as the man who crowned Charlemagne as Holy Roman Emperor on Christmas Day in the year 800. But Leo was also a master builder. He wanted to show the world that the Bishop of Rome was not a vassal of the East, but a sovereign equal to the Byzantine emperor. To do this, he transformed the Patriarchium into a palace that physically mirrored the imperial splendor of Constantinople. Thanks to historical records like the Liber Pontificalis, and the context provided by these new walls, we can virtually reconstruct the two most legendary halls of this lost palace. The first was the Triclinium Leoninum, the Great Banqueting Hall. Imagine a hall 68 meters long. That is longer than the nave of many cathedrals. It was built explicitly to awe Charlemagne and the Frankish nobility. The design was a direct challenge to Constantinople. The Byzantine emperor had the Triclinium of the 19 couches, so the Pope built one too. The floor was paved with multicolored marble in a style called opus sectile. The walls were lined with pilasters of porphyry. Porphyry is a crucial detail here. It is a deep purple stone that, in the ancient world, was reserved exclusively for royalty. By using it, Leo was shouting in stone that he was a king. At the end of this massive hall stood a giant apse covered in shimmering gold mosaics. In the center of the room there was a fountain, also made of red porphyry, that ran with water during banquets to cool the air and provide a soothing acoustic backdrop to the feasting. The mosaics were a political manifesto. On one side they depicted Christ giving the keys to St. Peter and the banner to Constantine. On the other side, St. Peter was shown giving the pallium, the symbol of religious authority, to Pope Leo III, and the banner of military authority to Charlemagne. It was a visual declaration of the dual power structure of the Middle Ages, Pope and Emperor, ruling Christendom together. The second great hall was the Aula Concilii, the Hall of the Council. If the Triclinium was for feasting, this room was for ruling. It was a magnificent oblong hall featuring 11 apses. There was one large apse at the head for the Pope, and 5 smaller ones on each side. Each of the 10 side apses contained a dining couch, allowing the Pope and his cardinals to recline while debating the affairs of the world, mimicking the style of ancient Roman senators. The main apse featured a mosaic of Christ with the apostles, while the side apses were frescoed with scenes of the apostles preaching. This was the room where the Lateran councils were held, where dogmas were defined, and where kings were excommunicated. Deep inside this fortified complex was the Sancta Sanctorum, or the Holy of Holies. This is actually the only part of the palace that is still standing today, though it is encased in later buildings. In the Middle Ages, this was the spiritual core of the Patriarchium. It housed the most precious relics in Christendom, including an icon of Christ said to be a kerapoiton, meaning not made by human hands. On the Feast of the Assumption, the Pope would process from here, carrying this icon through the streets of Rome, a ritual that bound the city's people to their spiritual father. So, if this palace was so magnificent, a fortress of God capable of withstanding sieges and hosting emperors, where is it now? Why did archaeologists have to rediscover it under a layer of asphalt? The end of the Patriarchium came not with a bang, but with a whisper, followed by fire. In 1309, the French Pope Clement V refused to move to Rome. He set up his court in Avignon, France, beginning a period known as the Babylonian Captivity. For nearly 70 years, the popes lived in France, building a massive new palace there. Back in Rome, the Patriarchium was abandoned. Without the papal court, the economy of the Lateran area collapsed. The palace was looted, and squatters moved in. Then disaster struck. In 1308, a massive blaze gutted the basilica and the palace. In 1361, another fire finished the job. The roof of the Great Triclinium collapsed, and the Aula Concilii was left open to the sky, exposed to the elements. When the popes finally returned to Rome in 1377, they found the Lateran uninhabitable. The Golden Basilica was a ruin. The palace was a ghost town of crumbling apses and rotting timber. They chose to move to the Vatican, primarily because it was near the safety of the Castel Sant'Angelo, a more compact fortress. The final death blow to the Patriarchium came in the late 16th century. Pope Sixtus V, known as the Iron Pope, decided to modernize Rome. He had absolutely no sentimentality for medieval ruins. He ordered the demolition of the remains of the old Patriarchium to build the modern Lateran palace that stands there today. His architect, Domenico Fontana, tore down the Aula Concilii. He dismantled the Triclinium, saving only the apse mosaic, which he relocated outside as a monument. The legendary Carolingian palace was erased from the skyline, its foundations buried under the new piazza, waiting for the year 2024. The discovery of these walls is significant because it reminds us that for most of Christian history, the center of gravity was not St. Peter's. The Vatican is the new Rome. The Lateran is the link to the old Rome. The layers of stratigraphy found by the archaeologists show a complex evolution from a Roman cavalry barracks, the Castra Nova Equitum Singularium, directly to the spiritual palace of the West. It highlights the ambition of the Carolingian Renaissance, proving that Leo III didn't just crown an emperor, he built a capital worthy of one. The Italian Ministry of Culture has announced that these findings will be preserved in situ. This means that for the pilgrims arriving for the 2025 Jubilee, there will be a new station of the cross. They will have the chance to look down into the earth and see the rough, dark volcanic bones of the lost empire. As you imagine standing in the Piazza San Giovanni today, look past the traffic, look down at the open trenches. Those rough black stones were laid by men who watched the horizon for Saracen sails, men who walked with Charlemagne, and men who built a fortress for God in a city of ruins. The Patriarchium is lost no longer. It has risen to remind us that Rome never truly forgets. Thanks for listening to Fun Facts Online, and we will see you in the next deep dive.